Barely see any of you, so can I ask that you all move forward just to make it feel a little bit cozier for the rest of us? Don't be shy. Please, come on. We're going to try and make this one really fun because I think all you've done is you've heard lots of people talk. We're going to try and make this a little bit more interesting and interactive. So if you all come closer, you'll all feel part of it more. Okay, so I'll start by introducing myself. Firstly, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for staying. It means a lot to us. So I'm Siddhi Trivedi. I do lots of things, but I'm interested in blockchain, and I'm also an investor, and I have advisory roles in a few ICOs. So my interest in blockchain has arisen because I'm also a TEDx organizer, and I was inspired by Dan Tapscott, who I was fortunate to listen to at TED Summit in 2016. And thereafter, we formed a group of TEDsters who are very interested in blockchain, and we heard one of the TEDx organizers from New York, Laurie Corpez, and there's a whole group of us, a global network, that's starting to really start thinking about how we can use blockchain for good. So that's why this is quite an exciting panel to moderate, because we have some amazing ladies here who have such exciting ideas and inspirations, and also we've already heard one keynote and opened the session. So without much ado, I'm going to actually pass the mic on and let everyone introduce themselves. So as you've already heard from Trisha, I'm just going to give her the mic again for those of you who've missed her at the beginning. So.
Thanks. My name is Trisha Martinez. I'm the founder and CEO of Voila. We're a mobile financial platform for emerging market consumers, so we essentially digitize a bank's offerings and help them reach consumers more efficiently and remove fees completely from the financial system. And we recently created the Dollar Foundation, which issued the Dollar token. We're building the cryptocurrency for emerging market consumers. We want to support consumers with instant, zero-fee, borderless micropayments. Some background, I'm a behavioral economist, spent my career working in microfinance and financial inclusion, really passionate about how we can move the needle on behavior change, how can we get consumers to save more, invest in their lives, prepare for the future, and I really believe that crypto is what can drive that.
Hi, my name is Jenny Stein, and my background is I'm an electrical and computer engineer, and did a dissertation in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning, and founded 3 companies, sold 1 company, and my Panotip company is a knowledge-based platform with artificial intelligence, and we have experts platform, like expert can talk to consumer and consult, and we built that on base of blockchain, and we got many experts in different areas, like from arts till physicians, there are different healthcare areas, lawyers, and other areas, and you can pay in cryptocurrency. And we are building our own coin. And beside that, I founded a foundation in Silicon Valley. It's called MEI Foundation, and that is now since 1 year, but very well known in Silicon Valley. And today I'm representing the team Block Society, who is based in Silicon Valley, an organization with different chapters globally, just based on women who are on blockchain.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ali Paz. I'm on the board of directors of the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance, advisory board member at Blockmatics, a blockchain education company that does training and development for development talent in the space. I've done investing, advising with companies, and spent 8 years at a number of different Wall Street financial institutions, looking at obviously how blockchain is going to kind of revolutionize financial inclusion, which is why this in particular is very important to me.
My name is Elizabeth Hunker. I'm the entrepreneur in residence at a fund in New York with a primary technology market research firm internally, where we survey about 4,000 CIO CTOs, basically about their forward-looking spending intentions, which kind of sets really accurately what the future of enterprise tech and everything that aims to disrupt it will be for the following few years. And privately, I've been buying into and then investing and advising more recently into the blockchain space since about 2010, discovering all of this through, I think what drove a lot of people into the space was this blockchain for good concept of how do we fix the financial kind of landscape that had recently broken, and yeah, that's kind of what brings me here today.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So we've introduced ourselves, so now I'm going to find out how many of us can actually engage in this conversation. So we're talking about blockchain for good, and I think it would be really good to focus on I'm going to ask how many of you can name the 17 Sustainable Development Goals for the UN. So I'm going to ask you to shout them all out. So start with the first one. Hand up. Hands up. Poverty. Sustainability.
Recycle.
Well, it's about environment. Yeah.
Gender equality.
Gender equality.
Education.
Right.
Mental health.
Perfect.
Access to clean food and water.
Yes. Excellent. Few more left.
Partnerships, something like that.
Very good. That's the last one. All right. So, my panelists, can you remember them? Okay. So the ones you've missed out are. There are 17, and what we have missed out are life below water and life above water. And then, of course, the one that we've included climate. We've got zero hunger. We've got good health and well-being, and education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable, clean energy, decent work and economic growth, responsible consumption and production. We didn't have that one. So peace and justice is the other one we missed out. So I thought that would be quite nice and nicely leads on to why we're here. We could spend a long time going through all the reasons and areas where we could address tech for good and how blockchain can help address some of these areas. But we're going to focus on about 3. And then I'm going to open it up to the panel and also open it up to you to also ask the panel any questions you have. So the first one is, we've already started, so we might as well elaborate. So Tricia has already talked about financial inclusion. What would be really interesting is to try and actually talk about exactly how this is important, why it could be used to eliminate poverty.
Oh, well, that's pretty deep. So I have the fundamental belief in terms of financial inclusion that in regards to poverty, you can't get educated, you can't get access to healthcare, you can't move forward in your life until you actually have money, until you have a safe place to store it, a safe place to grow it, until you have the systems around you that are designed to help you and support you. In most emerging markets, those systems just aren't there. And what's interesting about blockchain technology in regards to the financial ecosystem is that it actually touches so many different components of impact. I think we're going to talk about this later, basic identity. So, in order to get a bank account now, you need to go through KYC, which means I need to know who you are, I need your identification to make sure you are who you say you are, do background checks. A lot of consumers in these markets don't have identification. That's a big problem. Another component is actually removing a middleman. Consumers don't trust these banks. The banks operate as a middleman. There's a lot of corruption. To give you an example, in South Africa, if there's fraud involved with your bank account and you go into a bank, they charge you for even questioning the fraud. So consumers are not incentivized to participate in the system because the banks really govern everything and control everything, and there's no trust in these systems. So there's a number of components that blockchain can touch on. To give you some context about what we're doing, we believe that access and costs are the biggest barriers for financial inclusion. In terms of costs, what we do with blockchain technology is we actually operate an off-chain technology. So enabling transactions to operate off-chain, we're an ERC20 token. We utilize micro-raiden and the Raiden network to support micro-payments, instant near-free payments. So there's a lot of compelling things that you can do when it comes to blockchain technology, but we're still so far away. And I think with financial inclusion, it's probably one of the easiest, most attainable blockchain components. Like remittances is the most obvious use case for people. We can do it really quickly. We can do it free now. You don't need an identification to actually get access to these systems to move money around, which is the biggest barrier. So somebody else want to jump in?
I think that what you're talking about in South Africa, is sort of a perfect example of how identity and also for the banks utilizing financial inclusion or not utilizing financial inclusion is going to be a way that blockchain is able to help disintermediate the middleman. So an example I've had in mind frequently recently is a good friend of mine has been purchasing an apartment in San Francisco, and she recently showed me the documents that she got from her mortgage broker, which is a large bank who I won't mention, and it actually said on there, buyer is a single woman. And I was really shocked to see that in 2017, this was still something that was written on a document, right? And of course, the rate that she would get is probably very different than if she were, say, a married man. And she doesn't have control of her identity and her rating in the same way that she might if, she was the one issuing it to herself. And so having the ability to control that technology yourself, write it yourself, and sort of issue your own score and buy the apartment yourself is going to be pretty amazing to do that, and very empowering.
I think it was a good point that you brought up about the know your customer kind of process right now is kind of right late probably to get kind of this whole space moved into this broader institutional acceptance following these needed documents to produce to participate, like with Coinbase, bring a passport and proof of your residence. But we can now start to not only lower the rung on the ladder, but create alternate ladders for people to access, remittances tools to prove their identity or build identity where they don't have access to those documents, especially in these emerging markets, by other means, by other people vouching for them, by the unique signature they leave in their commercial or social behavior, to allow access to become a lot wider kind of delta to get involved in building an identity and building a financial kind of sovereign identity.
Ali, did you want to talk a bit more about Siglu? I think Elizabeth.
Siglo is a great, another kind of tool similar to yours that is focusing in the Latin market right now. They've already launched in Colombia and Mexico, where they're allowing people to not only get financial inclusion, but also digital inclusion by basically monetizing attention of these users and rewarding them with airtime and tokens that they can change. And I think they've already surpassed over $1 million in remittances live used on this platform, and they're working on getting their own satellites up and really helping these people control their own digital and financial fates. It's a great project to look into, Siglo.
So I'm going to actually now open it up to the floor because I want you to stay engaged with us. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? Okay, great. Can we have a mic? Can someone take the mic over to, so just behind you. Thanks, Laurie. Oh, someone next to you. Yeah, great. Could you introduce yourself and just give us a little bit of a context of who you are? No? Turn it on. Just make sure it's real.
So my name is Sydney. I've been an advisor to some blockchain startup companies recently, and I had a question for Elizabeth. So given that your extensive research and interviewing CTOs, CIOs in that space, I was just wondering if there was something surprising in terms of trends within this technology space that you've been hearing, and kind of what conclusions you've drawn from it so far.
Did you get that?
So the question was about, given the research that is conducted at my fund through Enterprise Technology Research, if you want to look them up, where we survey basically the pulse on the people who control most of the B2B infrastructural tech spend globally, if there are any surprising trends that we're seeing. And there are certainly trends that surprised me coming from more kind of the emerging Silicon Valley world when I first entered this space about a year and a half ago. Which is that far and away the biggest driver towards adoption or rejection of any new technology or vendor is basically risk mitigation. They need to be able to justify to their CROs, CFOs, and shareholders in these public companies that if they're adopting something or investing more into something or rejecting something, that it's going to be because it's not going to put at risk their kind of monolithic technology empires or the technology that drives their non-tech companies. So we're actually seeing, even though AI and ML has been kind of in the space and in the water and in the conversation for longer, there is faster adoption of blockchain technology. And I think examples of the worst case scenario being very bad and already happening with not securing database information, for example, like with Equifax, that it's negligent not to what would otherwise be take this risk in adopting this new technology. Whereas ML and AI, they're not seeing as much the highs or lows of or at least the highs of the positives versus the lows of what could go wrong, which I think Elon Musk makes it his full-time job to make us all aware of.
And then there's a gentleman behind.
Yep, question here. So my name's Andrew. I've been in financial services for way too many years, 17 years now. And I'm wondering what the added value, identity could be one. What's the added value of using a blockchain-based currency in emerging markets versus the technology that's out there, and I'll point to Bcash from Brack. And so what is the difference that you're looking to say this is a better solution than that technology is?
Can I give that to you?
Yeah. So for us specifically, we recognized that we needed to provide instant zero-fee and borderless payments. So you can't move fiat cross-border without dealing with regulatory issues. You can't do it cheaply. You can't use other payment rails, other banking rails. We needed to operate our own system more efficiently, do it instantly, and remove the fees completely, because that's a big barrier for consumers when you're living on $2 a day, paying 10% fee to move money around is massive for your lifetime. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Bcash, but unless they're a cryptocurrency, then they can't remove these fees, and they're utilizing some other payment rail that's not their own. So that was the biggest need that we saw that we could deliver with our own cryptocurrency. And I think that's reason enough.
So using the blockchain is actually for social good is the perfect example. It is the best thing because you are able to deliver directly to the person instead of going through many institutions. And that was never ever before. So if you are like giving a charity or somebody money, you are giving, let's say, the Red Cross or anything, any person money until they receive the money. They might 80% stay in the institution or in the political government until in the people they cannot receive it. So today, through the blockchain technology, we are able directly to deliver person by person. We have solution for that. And that's the difference, so that we are now able, the person who is receiving $2 before, able to receive 10 or 20 or $30 more than before, because he has not to deliver all those fees and all those costs to other people and intermediate costs. So this is something really important, and big change happened because of the blockchain.
The only other thing that I would add to that is that the blockchain also helps secure that the person intended to receive it is the only person who gets access to it. There's a major issue with international aid where the goods or cash or whatever is being delivered is being taken and stolen and redirected and goes into a black box, whereas blockchain technology really helps secure that the intended user has a much better chance, at least, of being the only person who receives that and then can decide after that point what to do with it.
So, first you and then
Hi.
Jeff.
I'm going to shout. Mike Butcher from TechCrunch, a journalist. Quick point, actually, just to follow up your point actually about the aid, the international aid is actually, there's a demonstration of blockchain technology in Jordan where they're delivering aid packages, and then it's registered on a blockchain to a QR code, and then it means that it actually did get delivered rather than ended up in somebody's warehouse. My question is, in this new world, this new environment, traditionally in emerging markets, mobile money has taken off. For instance, M-Pesa took off in Kenya, is now 10% of the GDP there. And there's other examples of that, but obviously that's still linking into traditional banking infrastructure. In this new world, what effectively you're doing is you're asking people to walk around, they are their own bank, aren't they, effectively? So what do you think can be done to mitigate problems around that? For instance, we've already seen, Bitcoin whales being, held up and held at gunpoint for their cryptocurrency keys, etc. What happens to normal people in that environment when they are effectively their own bank? And how do you see that playing out in emerging markets? Thank you.
So literally, so in a nutshell, these are the real challenges that we've got to try and address. So shall I start with?
So the first thing which is important to know and to always recognize, we have here the mobile phones. The people, they have their wallet, let's say, on their mobile phone. Through their mobile phone, they have the location. Through the location, we are able to find that this person is receiving this money. And through the location, we are able to find if something happened to the wallet or this person itself. So there are not yet technologies there to protect those people in such a smart way. But I thought about it and thought that the best solution right now for such a problem that might happen in the future is the location, to get to know where is this located, and to be able, since we know this is a mobile phone, and since we are able to locate a mobile phone, since we are able to find if somebody stole a mobile phone or get it in different places, to be able to work on that and have technologies that protect those people that owns now, like a bank, own money on their mobile phone or on their wallet. Did we answer your question, or we still, there are other problems might happen with cryptocurrency and with the wallet problems that we have to consider, because there are other crimes that they happen because of that, and you have always to think about it. But the good news about it is the person who was receiving $2 is able now to receive perhaps $100. And so the poverty problem from the UN, we can solve little bit, but we can solve with blockchain technology.
So any of the mobile network operators, Airtel, Vodacom, MTN, looking at Safaricom with M-Pesa, they have some of the lowest levels of security on these platforms. So most of them are USSD based. if I know your code, I can actually log in. There's no security around these phones. So, and speaking from what we're doing in Africa, we actually are a smartphone application, and although there are keys and things like this, we're controlling on behalf of some of these users, because when you talk about private keys, it becomes very confusing, and we're not trying to create a system like that. We want to make sure that there's uptake and that we're providing a financial inclusion outlet for consumers. We utilize other security systems for finger authentication. There's no way that somebody can break into a phone. If you have a basic camera, you're taking a picture of your 4 fingers unless somebody cuts off your hand. So there are ways to mitigate it through other security platforms to ensure that the consumer actually, it is their phone, it is their wallet, and that they do own those keys.
Anybody else want to answer that? Is that answer your question?
That's very interesting, thank you.
Okay, and the gentleman behind.
Yes, I just want to ask a couple of questions, but I want to phrase it in a certain way. I used to have a little fund, and I used to lend friends money, and when I loaned them the money, I also gave them the expertise to go with using the money. Because sometimes you lend them the money, but they don't know how to manage the money properly. Now, this nice lady here have done something in Africa with dollar, with being able to put the money in. Of course, there's a lot of solutions going to come up in order to mitigate, people trying to steal the money. Are you doing anything beyond just giving money? Are you also going to find a way to educate the people how to use the money properly and how to educate themselves? Because you can have money, but you also need to take that money and work within each other. Like, for example, we did some research in Africa, and they were going to automate the farming process by bringing in tractors and everything. But then when we do a feasibility study, these people went to the farm and talked to each other. That's how they gave each other information, right? So if you're going to be able to give money in that particular way, you're going to also empower those people to sort of use the technology to lend to each other, because they're going to get the highest technology and they're going to see it in their hand. How can we improve somebody else's quality of somebody else's life? Because you're improving their life to start with, and they might be able to want to pass it on to somebody else in the same way. Like, in other words, if they want to crowdsource to give somebody 10 cents or 20 cents, is that going to be part of the open architecture?
That's an excellent question, I have to say. So it's about empowering as well as, educating. So do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so this is actually a conversation that I'm having with a number of people right now. So the beauty of open source technology is that everyone can be their own bank, and it allows for full financial inclusion. The downfall of what has become sort of the pedagogy of American education system is that it didn't teach everyone financial inclusion the way it's sort of now been traditionally taught and rolled out. And we've sort of seen that repeated, unfortunately, over and over. And so in order to empower people to actually be their own bank and to know how to truly be able to do treasury management for their own needs and what's being done day to day, sort of different disciplines have to be put into place and rolled out and rolled out through the incredible technology that already exists, on the internet and the viral technology that is out there. So I'm working with a couple of different fantastic partners now to put pieces of that together, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, because we have some ideas, but we would love to hear more.
So you can take that offline now, so that's good. You want to answer that?
Yeah, so we actually, my background was working in microfinance, and I quickly recognized that there are so many financial institutions that provide loans to consumers who lack any form of financial literacy, right? If you're not taught it, then you're not going to know how to pay back this loan and get on the right track with your business. So that's probably the biggest problem in emerging market finance, is the lack of literacy. And so we actually, when I moved to Africa, I literally went township to township having conversation with consumer after consumer to figure out what their problems were. And surprisingly, I was bombarded with people who just were seeking financial advice. How do I save? How do I prepare for the future? How do I create a budget? So we created a simple community. In the first month, the community grew to 100,000 people organically with just a few posts every day about why you should save, why you should budget. So we know that consumers are hungry for this information, and it's platform driven. So there can be crypto wallets out there that just enable a wallet and don't provide any tools or literacy for those consumers. But our vision is providing the literacy, helping consumers save, prepare for their future. Our mentality is that Dala means financial freedom. And in order to get there, we have to give them the tools to do that.
Okay, we could talk about this for the rest of the 45 minutes, but I think we should try and think of something else to talk about. So the next one of the sustainable goals is, I think we talked about mental health and well-being. There are, I would say, I'm actually personally in this field, I know there are plenty of companies who are actually looking at developing solutions to this. And it doesn't matter how many there are, it's more about who's actually looking at solving the real problems. So who wants to go with that first? Do you want to?
So, our platform, Panotip, we have experts platform, and we have psychiatrists and different physicians that work on the topic of like psychology and the different mental health. And we are working with those experts to deliver through blockchain information to the people and try to support them like on weekly or daily basis. Now that's what we do, but it is not just based on blockchain. I am sure she has more expertise in this area, therefore I will give it to her.
There you go, Ali.
So yeah, I think part of what we've sort of seen over the past decade has been a rise in mental health crises, and part of this has been this push for like the 10x developer and that sort of thing. And while we need a lot of developers to continue to build this out, the challenge that the UN has helped identify in the development goals is how do we push for full financial inclusivity while also creating awareness around some of the challenges that are truly out there as we become a more decentralized society and like lose this sense of inclusivity that we used to have when we were this amazing community. You were kind of all together and lived within our tribe and our village, right? And so creating incredible content that allows us to identify some of the problems that we're having day to day and address them openly is a way to do that. And have sources of funding so everyone can have access to healthcare. Mental health care is another way to do that in a way that perhaps they can't in countries that exist today, where they don't have access to those things. This is going to be pretty important going forward.
Yeah, there's at least a couple kind of main contributing factors that you can see in this space. One is clearly we're seeing a lot more than we ever had before, and that visibility is making it look like there is a rising kind of problem in mental health. And I think there is some validity to the fact that there actually is. And just as you said, we are these tribal creatures. We're used to living within this kind of Dunbar's number of a community of 150 people that we can kind of have a sense of their reputation and relate to and feel a sense of community with. And as this technology of the information age has really leveraged our abilities to connect, it's also kind of created this very general, large, alienating space where there are decentralized application protocols like Holochain that seek not only to protect financial data, but also to create one-to-one or limited kind of communities where everyone, you can reinstate basically these incentive systems in these communities across global divides, kind of borderlessly, bringing that sense again together, designing systems that feel like you're living in a Dunbar-sized community, as well as being actually able to protect this information on some of the better known blockchain technologies where you can get mental health data onto a blockchain without exposing yourself because it's secure. And we can perform better decentralized studies into this information and do some serious en masse kind of mind sharing and research sharing into the space to kind of solve it from both ends, both the community and the actual science going on there.
So one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is using an incentivized approach where we try and connect a community that basically aims to support the patient, because at the moment, the patient, especially from suffering from mental health illness, usually is disconnected from the community. And I think the services across the board globally are failing patients because it's very fragmented. So I think using the block to share data, maybe use an incentivized process to help the community to actually keep an eye on the patient or family member or community friend. So that's great. There's a lot of programs out there. I think ScriptDrop in the US is looking at incentivized drug adherence, for example. In the UK, we have Medical Chain that is looking at electronic health record system. I think we have also Amchar that is looking at electronic health records too. But there are still some real challenges. That would be interesting to explore because we say it's about secure data. I'm not quite sure if we're there yet. And I feel that there's still a little bit more to do in that area. And I noticed that Amchar is here. So do you mind if I ask, would you have a comment to make about the challenges and how you're actually addressing this security?
There's a lot of
but you can come closer. If you'd like to introduce yourself as well, just to...
Hi everyone, my name is Imran. I'm the financial analyst for AMSIS Group, under which we have AMSIS Blockchain as one of our divisions. Under that role, Amchar, which is our ICO and electronic healthcare records on the blockchain. So we're focusing on population health and looking at how we can incentivize large masses of people to stay on top of their electronic data and basically control their own electronic healthcare records and have it with them 24/7 through a mobile app. So the app is already in beta. We're expecting to have it on the App Store, Google Play Store, first week of April. So for just a quick example on like what everyone's already touched on, like a country like Guinea, for example, they currently have no medical records or no medical data at all for the whole country. So we're in talks with their health minister and trying to implement our solution and our technology for the whole country. So things like that and having a big population which previously had no medical data at all, and empowering them and showing them their own data I think it's very powerful, and that's a big reason why we're using blockchain technology. So we're building out the whole framework with using Hyperledger Sawtooth. So we have a hybrid model. With the ERC20 token, we're using that as an incentive model. So every time a patient or keeps up to date with their care plan that they set with their primary care physician, we incentivize them with giving them tokens. That's our whole model, and none of the founders and none of the team gets any tokens at all. Everything that we don't sell in our ICO, all the tokens that we don't distribute, they'll be used for incentivizing patients on a larger scale and giving those back to the people, and incentivizing them to stay on top of their health. In a nutshell, that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything else to add? Or make a comment on electronic health records or health and well-being? Yeah. Sure. The gentleman over there in the front. Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Vlada. I'm an ISO analyst, and I have a question regarding this record. So, one of the problems which I see with this type of projects is a legal part in the scalability. And so what I mean by that, so each country treats medical data in its own way. So let's say, for example, I don't know, like in Russia, it may be some sort of patient data is regulated by specific law. While in Greece, it would be completely different law. So, which might define what is like medical record, who has access to it, and so on. So maybe in some countries, the patient himself doesn't have right, to give up this data because, he doesn't have actual right over his own data. So my question, how really scalable? Because you probably have to do a lot of sort of legal research for each particular country.
Okay.
So I'm just asking if that's sort of concern.
It's a good question. So I'm going to just say one thing. You're absolutely right. So if you look at India, in India, the patient actually has their own medical records, and they're all handwritten. Because that's how it is. There's no electronic record system unless you've gone off and you've gone privately and it's an affiliated through another country. So yes, in that case it's perfect, because to have their own records in an electronic form is fine, and I don't think there's any legality. The UK, we've got the NHS system. The NHS system is complex. In fact, personal experience can tell you that no one person has all the information in one place, because the system is just not got there sophisticated enough. So legally, personally, I think we have to move to a point where all aspects of blockchain technology is empowering the individual with their personal data, so you can monetize it yourself. So the NHS, there's been a case in one hospital where they took medical data without the patient's permission and provided it to DeepMind, and that became a scandal, for example. So now the big issue is who owns the medical data. Yes, the patient should have the data in combination with the healthcare providers, but the patient should know who has changed or added or amended the records, not the other way around, where the patient doesn't know who's got records, who's changing it, and what's written on them, because in most of the cases, I have no idea what's been written on my record case and what my physician's been writing about me or my child. So I think on a legal sense, I think we're going to have to move with every other area and aspect. Person has to own their own data and be in charge of it. And they choose who to monetize with or who to share it with. When it comes to health records, that's a joint decision. So, is there anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. So, I have a little bit law enforcement background. I used to work,
Sure.
and I know one thing that, for example, let's assume I have medical record like in Spain, for example, and I sell this information to a company which is in Britain. So at this point, how do I make sure that this information will not be used by, for example, foreign intelligence? Because I know it might sound like that's some conspiracy theory, but actually, imagine if I'm a politician who is running, okay, for whatever elections, and this data gets to country which is not actually like friendly or for whatever motives they support opposition or whatever. And so what happens, they might pull out some, hey, look, this guy, he had some, for example, mental issue like 10 years ago, and now they're gonna pull it out during elections. So how do I make sure that when I sell my data to, let's say, insurance company or my record to, like in medical chain, you can sell to certain third parties. How do I make sure that these third parties do not resell this information in that foreign country? Because I have no control over that information.
Do you want to answer that one, Amchar?
Yeah, so currently everyone's medical data is being sold. Everyone, you're not getting a penny from that. So going back to Russia, I think that's a big problem that people in Russia
aren't legally allowed to have their medical data. Like, why is that? Like, I don't understand that. Like, fundamental aspect.
I think, though, you bring up a really good point in that there's so much potential with blockchain technology, and we always like to talk about the good it's going to create and what we can do, but there's still so many unanswered questions, and that's something we were talking about earlier, whether it's land ownership, to medical data, to basic remittances. Who's implementing this technology? I could be living in a corrupt regime, a market with a corrupt regime, and they're enforcing land ownership, blockchain technology. So who's actually going to end up owning that land? So there's so many things that we still don't really know yet, and we don't have the systems built out. But I think we're all trying to figure it out. What's interesting to me is that literally 10 years from now, we're all going to be looking back and probably be laughing, because we'll say, how did we not think of this before? How did we not realize there are so many things in terms of creating good that we haven't even discovered yet that blockchain will actually solve, but we're just so far behind in our understanding of the actual technology.
I have a question.
Mine is more general. What I'm thinking about is, since there's so many coins out there, have ICOs started to kind of merge like they do in the corporate world? Like, have they started to buy each other out or anything like that?
Good, it's a good question.
Because it seems like there's so many of them, then eventually the weaker coins should merge rather than just disappear. So I'm just wondering if there's anything about that yet.
Right, do you want to go?
Yeah, when we did our token sale last year, there were a handful of other companies doing similar things in the financial inclusion space, and when we did our token sale, it was during the Bitcoin run. Nobody was moving money. Everyone was hodling Bitcoin. So a lot of companies were approaching us saying, like, let's join forces. Let's do the first ICO merger. There are talks about this, but what does that really mean? What about the existing token holders? What happens to, like, do you create a new cryptocurrency? I haven't seen one yet, but we did have conversations about it. Other companies that approached us asking us to do it, we said no, just because it was very complicated, and we essentially now are a public company and have shareholders that we need to support and make sure that we're delivering to them. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you have too much M&A in the space, it starts to look like centralization all over again, right? And that's part of what we're trying to avoid. And the Jobs Act and crowdfunding has allowed for people who couldn't previously be financially included to be financially included. Certainly, there are younger, more inexperienced teams who can't do treasury management, who may be bought out, and that makes a little more sense. And this is part of the financial inclusivity part of this, but that's not how this should be panning out. Less Lambos, more real-world use cases.
Yes.
Yeah. If you bought a Lambo, send it back, please.
Okay, so are there any more questions?
One quick question. No, just back to the medical. The European Union has implemented a new consumer protection data law that's coming out.
Yeah.
And it's going to be $20 million or $4 million per instance of anything like this data breach happening. So the last conference I was at, they were talking about security conference about the data will be encrypted on the person's device instead of being, instead they're bringing the information to the data instead of data to the information. They're trying to switch it around because the new law, I think it comes out in about 5 months.
Actually, it's May.
That's right, in May, right.
In May.
And that's going to really address, they're ahead of the game in sort of that, because we invested in the technology about 15 years ago, because Canada has what we call medical, like everybody gets covered by medical.
Yeah.
So I used to call my friends from the States and tell them to come to Canada for a visit, and I'd take them to the doctor, and they didn't have a doctor bill. And a company further that what they did was that they had a lot of medical centers, and the doctors had to do work on the patient, and they had to send the bill to the insurance company. And we created a software system where they would bill it, and they get automatically payment, but we would factor the amount from the doctor, so electronic record that was going through. And at that particular time, we were breaking it up as if the credit card payment, you know what I mean? Like the numbers don't go accordingly. So, I mean, if your data gets to somebody else, you know, I think what the European Union is doing as far as the data control, I think that would be much better, because every time you add the information to somebody's record, there's got to be an audit trail throughout that way, because if it's not right, it would be corrected in that way. But I think what Europeans are doing as far as addressing that, I think they're ahead of the game, and I think it could be an interesting solution that, you know, we're addressing from there.
Okay, how are we doing for time? Because I can barely see. One more question. Anybody?
Hey, so
who wants?
I got a microphone.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Rob Banky with Token Agency. And so I wanted to just sort of redirect the question, or really the topic, to token incentive strategy. So our agency is working with a US municipality to do a couple different crypto initiatives. And it's all dedicated to, you know, one example is like a program to house the homeless. That is, you know, it was defunded, and now they're doing a crypto initiative around this. And we're trying to continue to build incentive. You know, I love, you know, how it's all about, you know, the world lives off incentives. And I would love to learn about, you know, any token incentive strategies that you've seen work, because we're trying to, you know, help all sorts of different topics, call them topics, but really big issues for local and state and eventually federal municipalities. So.
Brilliant. So I'm going to ask every one of the panel to give their view. So that's the last question. You might as well start.
I guess I'll speak to what we're doing just because that's what I know. So we actually designed Dala as a rewards-driven platform. So the Dala API actually has an incentives mechanism tied into it, so that any enterprise that wants to plug into Dala can design rewards and incentives to. For example, we're working with an education company that wants to drive better attendance, better school scores on tests, so they're getting rewarded for that in Dala. Same thing with what we're doing in the Walla platform. We're rewarding financial behavior. So we've designed the cryptocurrency and the API so that enterprises can build out their own incentives model directly with their cryptocurrency. So it can tackle education, health, a number of different things, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah, we designed too our platform in a way that many people can get rewards, and like the expert gets reward, and the people, the consumers get reward. And you take to a point like with the homeless, where we have a big problem in San Francisco with this problem, and rewarding, we are doing also, we have like a voting system. People who are doing some social good, they get much more rewarding. And that's what we are trying to do in incentivizing to do more social good. So we have in our system and through our MEI Foundation, we are doing a way that people who are helping third countries, Africa, and different countries, that they get different and better reward. People who are trying to help and make sure that homeless people are getting something out of that, to get much more reward. So we are trying to incentivize this process and thinking a lot higher rewarding for the social good, because we are doing social good and trying to help other people. That's actually what we are looking for.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this one a lot, and how, particularly with the homeless in San Francisco, how to show both the proof of work mechanism, not just through actually showing up, as well as incentivizing likes. And so I've been talking to some people and thinking about using some form of an emoji and not being the currency, because that's now something we're all kind of like trained to respond to, right? Thanks Facebook and Twitter. And so would love to like get other people's thoughts as we've all kind of started to develop these mechanism around, you know, training apps and training data and that kind of stuff with ML libraries that are out there. And it seems like you guys have done these similar things too. So yeah, that's how I and others I know have been thinking about a lot of this.
I would say that even though this space is 8-9 years old, anything beyond kind of sending payments, mostly on gray markets, is pretty new and pretty young. So I really tend to look at, so Siglo is a great example of something that's really taken off. Their incentive system based on, you look at this advertisement, you get airtime, you can take those airtime tokens and trade them. That's, the flywheel is moving on that. Augur is a great kind of proof of stake system where you kind of incentivize expertise onto a marketplace, and though it hasn't been proven, its team has been proven in its previous iteration with InTrade. But as there are so few examples of kind of matured, proven incentive systems in this space, which have so many, you know, so many avenues theoretically to go down of incentivizing people in different ways, both directly and indirectly, I really tend to look at systems that have worked historically. The Machinery of Freedom by David Friedman is a great place to kind of view those anecdotally, but something that is really a plug-and-play system and does have some really successful incentivized token economies is a space that's been kind of working purely on incentivized systems and even digital currencies for decades, which is gaming. And that's a great place to take cues for how to design your own kind of utility-focused decentralized applications.
Okay, is that all we have? All right, so firstly, we've not talked about how, you know, this can be used for voting or using it for philanthropy, but there's so many other areas that we could explore. So I think maybe take this offline and after dinner or during dinner. I'd like to take the opportunity to say thank you to the panelists. Thank you to you for actually being engaged as well and make us not speak to an empty audience. So thank you so much.
You guys can stay for a second. Thank you guys for staying until the end of our conference. That was day 1. Tomorrow we have day 2, which is going to be ICO pitches and a few talks in the morning. So we'll have the ICO pitch competition 2:15 to 3:30. They will be live streamed. If you guys signed up for CryptoFRIENDS.io on the registration, we'll send you a link to how to vote. It's powered by the Superbloom Network. And tomorrow morning, my talk at 9:30 is going to be at Hilton CE, Salon CE, ICO's alternative financing for startups. Then we'll come over here and Superbloom's hosting a VIP brunch. If you guys are interested in that, please, it's cryptosxsw.com/superbloom if you guys want to sign up for VIP brunch. Then we'll start off here around 1 o'clock and go until 4:30 tomorrow afternoon with really great speakers. Jeremy Gardner has his own. He's commonly, you can Google him, he's commonly quoted as one of the youngest Bitcoin millionaires out there. A lot of really fun people and ICO pitches. And we will end tomorrow night with the Photon Mega Party. And it's going to be this room reconfigured to be awesome and over 1,000 people to come over. So see you guys tomorrow, and thank you guys for participating and supporting us today.
Have a day.